This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome back to Serious Danger, Patreon edition. Podcast about green politics in Australia, but only for those who really care and love us. Thank you for being a subscriber on Patreon. We love you very much. You already know this is not an official Greens Party podcast. It is produced by Michael the Griffin, and we are back, as I understand it. Tom promises me we are going to finish Chapter 11 of Inside the Greens. Is that right?
Well, that's what I have here on my little piece of paper.
That's what it says on the run sheet. TBC.
We split Chapter 11 into three parts because there is so much going on. Last time was the dual citizenship fiasco, the Gonski fight about Lee Rhiannon, all that war breaking out between Bob Brown and Lee Rhiannon. And there is a lot to cover in this last little section, I must say. It's not good.
Right.
It's not a great time for the Greens. We are going to be touching on the Batman by-election implosion when Alex Patel failed to take the seat of Batman. Various allegations of sexual assault within the party, how they were handled. Spoiler alert, not great maybe, but also maybe what was the alternative, ? And the 2019 election.
An important election for some.
For some people, indeed. Yes,
some
interested to hear about your memories therein.
Yes.
But yes, bit of a content warning. We'll be discussing allegations of sexual assault and sexual violence. So if that's not your thing, you don't want to listen to that, that's totally understandable.
Oh, that's totally my thing. What do you mean that's not your thing? If you're listening and that's your thing, go to therapies. Put down the podcast. Reconsider.
Good point. Well made. I should have phrased that better, and I apologise, and I'm holding myself accountable, and I'm very sorry. Let's start with good news. We sort of finished up part 2 of Chapter 11 last episode with the fact that Lydia Thorpe had won a by-election, becoming the first Aboriginal woman elected to the Victorian State Parliament for the seat of Northcote. Hooray. There was a big conference in Tasmania. They were watching the Victory Party. They were thinking, man, maybe the future's in Melbourne. Maybe Lydia Thorpe could one day lead the party in a Greens government or something.
Kind of.
Leave the party. Sorry, we meant leave the party.
Oh, lead. Right,
Sorry, I
lead.
should have again said that clearer. But then we go to good old Queensland. A week later, the Greens had a breakthrough in Queensland, finally winning their first seat in the state parliament more than 3 decades after the party was formed by Drew Hutton. Speaking of people leaving the party. Success did not come entirely out of the blue. In March 2016, a street poet and housing activist, John O'Shea, Nathan.
Street poet.
Not just a poet, but a poet of the street. Have you ever heard him describe himself that way?
Good question. Maybe that's why Paddy Manning has used it.
There you go.
He's certainly recited poetry on the street and about the street, many would say.
I think street poetry is a category of poetry, isn't it? Isn't that a genre?
So it's not beat poetry, it's street poetry. Is it related to beat poetry?
I don't know. Jono, if you're listening, do correct us.
Yeah.
He had been elected to the Gabba ward of Brisbane City Council, the most powerful local government in the country, with more than 1 million ratepayers spread over most of the metropolitan area. The Gabba ward covered almost exactly the same inner city suburbs as the state seat of South Brisbane. And as was the case so often in the Greens' history, the local council proved to be a beachhead for the party's push into Parliament. The Greens mounted a huge campaign to elect young social scientist Amy McMahon, who was doing a PhD on community responses to climate change, but Labor fought equally hard to defend the seat held by Deputy Premier Jackie Trad, who clung on narrowly despite a 12% swing. In an upset, the Greens broke through in the Liberal-held seat of Maywa, won by environmental lawyer Michael Berkman.
Heard of him?
Ever heard of that guy?
Friend of the
Your
show.
boss? Your mate? The Queensland Greens had defied expectations and, although Adani was possibly the number one issue in the campaign, ran hard on a solid left platform promising affordable homes for all and $1 tickets on public transport. Extortionate prices.
Doubling fares in Queensland. That's what the Greens wanted.
The Queenslanders hope their win might serve as a template nationally, a more radical alternative to the progressive mainstream model coming out of Melbourne. What do you think about all that, Queenslander Emerald Moon?
What a time. What a time. It's interesting. This was a classic where, yes, as he says, it was like all eyes were on South Brisbane. That was the really big contest, both because the Greens had won in the Gabba ward in the council election, but also because it was super high profile contest. And the issue was up against Jackie Trad, who was a deputy premier, really kind of significant, powerful player in the Labor Party. And then it was a little bit of maybe we should have been looking at Maiwar, which is where the Greens actually were able to come through. And it was very close. I think this was it 78 votes in the end that was the difference that got Michael through and got the Greens their first seat in state parliament. But it's an interesting one where, I often struggle with how do you weigh up the you paying attention to the demographics and just the kind of conditions that might make it possible to win a seat versus the strength of the campaign. Because arguably, like, the biggest campaign was being run in South Brisbane, but the Greens won in Maiwar. And I hate it when people put too much emphasis on just being like, well, the tide's going to turn. It's just demographics and then the Greens will win or they won't, because I think the campaign is so important. But it is a bit of a reminder that it's like you do also need to be looking at the conditions. Worth noting as well, it was a new seat. So when they say the Liberal-held seat of Maiwar, it was actually technically a result of a redistribution that created this new seat of Maiwar, and that certainly helped to win it for the Greens.
All right. It would have been provisionally Liberal whenever they create a new seat. Yes. They sort of say this is most likely going to be with one party.
Because Indooroopilly was held by the Liberals,
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I guess the expectations would have been scrambled then. Did Michael think he was going to win? Did he have campaign fever?
I don't think so, no. And I think it was one of those ones where he had like planned a trip away after the election and was like on a plane when he found out that he won or something like that.
Oh, fuck. I got elected to Parliament.
Yeah.
Well, at least the gays can get married. We also hear this. The last fortnight of parliamentary sittings for 2017 was tumultuous. The Greens chalked up a big win when Turnbull saw the writing on the wall and, for fear of losing a vote on the floor of the House, appointed a commission of inquiry into the banks. I remember that. I remember him dragging, kicking and screaming, and he announced it saying, "We're not going to put capitalism on trial." I was a bit like, when are we going to do that? That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, when is that trial happening?
Parliamentary inquiry into capitalism.
Yeah.
In all but name, this was the Royal Commission for which Peter Whish-Wilson had been campaigning for more than 4 years. Assistant Treasurer Kelly O'Dwyer, when it was put to her, jumped on it. The terms of reference were almost a replica of those proposed by the Greens. In a phone conversation with Whish-Wilson, O'Dwyer implied the government had pretty much copied them. Not that the mainstream media coverage reflected any of this.
Yes, that's one where the Greens totally don't get credit, of course, because it's a fucking economic issue.
Yeah. Yes, we're not allowed, even though Peter Whish-Wilson has, comes from the world of finance.
Yeah.
Who we will definitely get on the show in the near future, as he has announced his retirement. I guess he's still got a few more months. But he's stepping down from the Senate. By the end of the week, the focus of the Parliament had shifted to the lower house, where diehard opponents of marriage equality were moving last-ditch amendments designed to protect religious freedoms, trying to hold back a rising tide of support for Liberal Dean Smith's marriage equality bill, already passed by the Senate. Any change could delay the passage of the legislation until 2018. The public gallery was bursting like a rainbow itself. What?
As rainbows burst,
I'm not sure about that writing, Paddy.
Famously, that's what rainbows do.
With celebrity campaigners Magda Szubanski, Alex Greenwich, Christine Forster, celebrity, Tony Evans' sister, and the legendary Rodney Croome clapping, laughing, but most of all waiting for the Parliament to do what the people had a month earlier commanded it to do via postal survey. Every time a Conservative amendment went down, the crowd knew the final moment drew closer, and they cheered. Senators drifted in to watch the historic moment, half the Greens, Dean Smith, Penny Wong, George Brandis, more. When the last amendment failed and Speaker Tony Smith put the question that the bill be agreed to and then declared that the ayes had it, there was spontaneous applause. The gallery applauding MPs and MPs applauding the gallery. In a booming voice, Turnbull, whose heart had been broken in 1999 when the country said no to a republic, moved the third reading with an affirmative fist pump. Let's finalise this bill right now. Shorten got to his feet. Australia, we're going to make marriage equality a reality in minutes. The applause built again. And then the Speaker called the member for Melbourne. Unbelievably, there was a collective eye roll, muttered jeers and groans at the idea that Adam Bandt might want to speak on this historic occasion. He was the sole lower house representative of the party that had championed the rights of LGBTIQ Australians for decades. Wiped for a moment was the party's proud history. The story of Bob Brown coming out in 1976 when homosexuality was illegal in Tasmania and later becoming the country's first gay MP. Christine Milne's successful push for decriminalisation in 1997. Giselle Watson, the country's first lesbian MP. The Greens' steadfast opposition to John Howard's 2004 amendment to the Marriage Act, backed by Labor. The Greens had voted for equality at every step when it was not only unfashionable but also politically risky. Bandt would not remain quiet on this historic occasion. Graciously, feeling the happy impatience of the gallery, he said less than 60 words, declaring that after years of bigotry and hate, it was time to pop the bubbly because love has won. The Greens had done the hard yards and served its purpose.
Yay.
I know I've made this point multiple times on the show, but it's important to keep in mind, yes, the Greens do all this shit, never get the credit. Now, we don't do it to get the credit. I just like pointing that out to remind people listening to this show as members and volunteers and people who believe in the kind of politics we're talking about. It's like you got to hang on to that shit, right? Like you've got to hang on to what you believe in and your vision for a better world and try to see it get done. And don't do it for the sake of external validation from our fucked up political or media class. Do it because it's the right thing to do, for God's sakes.
Or should you just trust that eventually it'll happen anyway? So why be involved with the movement pushing it ahead of its time?
Oh, that's cynical. Isn't that cynical?
Well, that's me putting the question, because do you think that it would have happened without a political force like the Greens pushing it every step of the way? Like, I do like to think that it doesn't happen without the Greens in there.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I mean, gosh, there is no alternative sort of counterfactual, really. Sure, you know, if the Greens weren't a political force in Australia, yes, marriage equality would probably still be achieved at some point in some way. But
I think it would
would
take
it have
longer.
happened the way that it did? Would it have, and think about the effect of that campaign. I know as a queer Australian, it meant a lot to me that there was a major political party that was prepared to take that stand and call out the bullshit and say what was clear to anyone with a conscience, that our laws were discriminatory and queer people should be allowed to marry the people they love like everybody else, So
That's the other point, is that, like, as I think I've said before, I think politicians are always a step behind the general public. And it does mean something to have someone who's actually, representing normal people in the fucking parliament.
Yes, well, there might be a point in which the Greens were ahead of public opinion. There was also a point in which the Greens represented public opinion, and the Greens and the major parties were way behind or too politically cowardly to actually adopt that position, even though they knew it was the right thing to do. Yeah. Plus, the Greens make people gay, like through indoctrination,
which is important.
And various government, which I think is important.
Someone has to do that. Yeah.
In 2018, we get a summary in South Australia and Tasmania. There are state elections. The South Australian Greens don't do very well because Nick Xenophon takes up a lot of the oxygen. The Tassie Greens have the worst result in 20 years. Pretty bleak down there in 2018. In Victoria, we have a by-election in the seat of Batman. And Alex Patel, totally poised to win. We talked about her on the last episode. She'd been the candidate multiple times, growing and growing. The vote came very, very close indeed in 2016. Then Labor announces Jed Carney from the ACTU as the candidate. The story soon broke. In January, 18 disaffected Greens from Batal's Darabra branch had lodged a 101-page bullying complaint against her with head office, seeking her deselection as candidate. The party dismissed the complaint, but it was leaked to the Australian's Chip Legrand, who wrote that it did not contain grievous instances of bullying or harassment. He described it as frivolous. Damaging leaks against Patel continued throughout the campaign, including to ABC Radio and The Age. By the end of the campaign, hundreds of Patel's posters had been defaced with bully stickers. For the campaign workers and for Patel itself, it was utterly devastating to be undermined by their own people. Carney was formidable, even wooing a thoroughly green audience at the Darebin Climate Action Forum on her opponent's turf, and attracted a parade of Labor luminaries to her campaign from all around the country, including Plibersek and Albanese. When Labor announced its policy to abolish cash refunds for unused franking credits, the Greens tried to play to Liberal supporters, worrying about the impact on self-funded retirees.
Wait, what?
Yes. Now that's the only level of information that we have for the book. I haven't heard that from anywhere else.
Must look into this.
I'm sure people working on that campaign
Yeah.
would have something to say about that. It's hard to think about the political calculus there. Like you're trying to win
This is also
Batman.
very confusing because isn't this literally a year or so? Like this is very soon before the supposed franking credits election, where the Greens.
Yes, that is 2019. That'll be the next year. So Labor's announced that policy. We have a by-election because this is when David Feeney, again, big fan of Serious Danger, shout out to David, he retires. Jed Carney becomes the Labor candidate. I guess they'd already announced the franking credit scheme. And apparently, according to this little book here, the Greens were like trying to appeal to Liberal supporters to vote Green to not support the idea of abolishing franking credits.
Question mark.
Yes, not sure about that. Batal's support for the BDS movement against Israel came into question after Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger told ABC Melbourne's John Fain it would be a factor in whether the Liberal Party decided to run a candidate. He would feel bad if the Liberals helped elect Labor, he conceded, but I'd feel worse if we didn't run and our preferences were then not directed against Greens and we elected a Greens member who had a record of anti-Semitism. See, this stuff's
Thank
been
God
happening
we've
for ages,
moved
guys.
on. Thank God we got that one straight.
Well, listen to Batal's response here. At a press conference in Canberra, a confident Batal found a form of words that suggested a way forward for the party on what had been a vexed issue. I've been terribly concerned about the actions of successive Israeli governments. I look at the great leadership of former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin as my hope for the state of Israel. I believe that the BDS was very all-encompassing, and I disagreed very strongly with the academic and cultural boycott aspects of that campaign.
Disagree.
Don't think you're going to win by splitting hairs there, Alex.
Yeah.
You're not
But
going to
this
win
is also-
over the attacks that is coming from you. And also, you kind of throw the BDS movement under the bus. If you believe in BDS as a call from civil society in Palestine to boycott, they think deeply about which organizations and which things to boycott and add to that list to boycott, divest, and sanction. And I don't think you get to say, I support some of the BDS actions here, but not so much with the others, right?
It's also kind of an interesting take to support economic sanctions and not support, or other types of, sanctions or boycotts and not support academic and cultural boycott aspects. Just, I don't know, ideologically speaking, what impacts are important to you or who is important to you.
Right.
And a
reminder, the cultural boycotts of apartheid South Africa were massive in raising the profile and did seriously play a role in ending the apartheid regime. So,
this also kind of speaks to something that we don't even really get to talk about enough because the conversation is so fucking blunted and has just become like, do you wholeheartedly support everything Israel has done versus do you not? When there is a whole spectrum of anti-Israel sentiment, all the way from people who are like, oh, this government's not quite so good, but go Israel as a concept, to people who are actually opposed to the concept of Zionism. And anyway.
Yeah. In the end, Liberals didn't run and their voters fanned out everywhere. Carney got an 8% swing, much bigger than the 3% which went to Batal. Once again, Animal Justice and other parties on the left detracted from the Greens' primary vote. Thank you so much. It was a historic defeat. Far from being on an inevitable rising trajectory due to internal sabotage, the Greens had blown their chances in another of the half dozen winnable lower house seats in the country, first Denison, now Batman. With the right candidates, Labor realised it could hold off the Greens in their inner Melbourne stronghold, just as Plibersek and Albanese had done in inner Sydney. The win put paid to any argument that Labor should abandon the inner city to the Greens and become a hip pocket-driven suburban vote-winning machine. One Labor source said that proposition was now regarded as fuck-witted to the point of heresy. The fallout dragged on for months, roiling the party's biggest branch. Batal was slowly but surely forced out of the party for talking to the media, unlike those who sabotaged the Batman campaign. The saga was turned into a full-length documentary. The candidate meant to chronicle a great Greens victory, but capturing instead a distressing party train wreck.
Oh, man.
Were you paying much attention to this from Queensland? Do you remember much of this particular?
It's an interesting one where I think this is also because I was just so early in my involvement with the party that some of this stuff is kind of just went over my head. Like I did not understand the internal party machinations and whatever, I don't know what was going on kind of factionally or whatnot. I vaguely just remember something bad happened with Alex Vitale's stuff. But yeah, I did not know what was happening. I mean, I don't know if we get into this later as well, but this is a great example and a great reminder of how at this time, Labor was so trying to play both sides, as they still do. But this is where it really came into focus, I think, for me, where in Queensland around this very time was when they were backing Adani and not only talking about approving Adani, which they did, I believe, the following year. I think they approved they gave the final approvals in maybe 2019. But in 2017 was when they were discussing giving a taxpayer-funded handout to Adani. They did end up doing a royalties deal. But all of this, they're all pro-coal up in Queensland. And then apparently Jed Carney is down in Melbourne wooing a crowd of a climate action forum. And it's that is just, it really blows my mind that the biggest, this really significant fucking dirty thermal coal project is being backed in all the way by the same party that's able to somehow convince people that they're pro-climate action.
Yes, wanting to have it both ways and getting angry at anyone pointing out that blatant contradiction, right? It's your fault for pointing that out. It's not Labor's fault for having a terrible position and not being able to stick to their own principles. Refugee rights as well. Jed Carney, very outspoken about refugee rights. Obviously a big issue in Melbourne and in this particular seat. But manages to get away by saying, I believe in refugee rights, but I fully support Operation Sovereign Borders and torturing refugees and locking them up indefinitely. I mean, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. And it's a disgrace, in my view. And look, I haven't talked to a Darebin Greens member who can give me a decent example of or a decent explanation of what happened from the other side of things. I've interviewed Alex Vitale for my podcast. She seems like a lovely person, and it was a great loss to the parliament and the party for her not to succeed in this instance. The idea that you would sabotage that and what is to be gained, very hard to understand. Very hard.
Yes. Yeah.
So, well, enough of Victoria's troubles. Let's go to New South Wales.
We can always
where
find
everyone gets
something
along great. Yes. At the National Press Club in April, Di Natale tacked further left, flagging policies to set up a publicly owned energy retailer and a new People's Bank. Oddly enough, sitting within the Reserve Bank. I think that's fine. It'd be good. That is. Sure. It's kind of People's Bank now that we don't have the Commonwealth Bank, I guess. The next day, David Shoebridge released an alternative manifesto which went even further, borrowing Jeremy Corbyn's slogan for the many, not the few, and complaining the Greens were not capturing an increased share of the vote despite polls showing growing popular dissatisfaction with democracy and a desire for major change. Shoebridge contrasted the disappointing result in Tasmania with the success of the more radical campaign in Queensland, and criticised the growing tendency within the Greens to take a cautious approach to social reform, casting the party as part of the political mainstream seeking achievable reforms. The manifesto set out a much more radical set of policies: a billionaire's tax, caps on CEOs' salaries, returning the Commonwealth Bank to public ownership, an end to privatisation, and so on. So did Shoebridge put out his own manifesto for the federal party?
Yeah, this is what I really don't understand around this time, and I wish I was more involved, because from the outside it just does not make sense. As a Queenslander, as a leftist in this party, I'm wait, so returning the Commonwealth Bank to public ownership, I'm not exactly sure why that's preferable to creating a publicly owned bank. I guess, sure, acquiring a private, renationalisation. The distinction between that and pushing for a publicly owned bank is kind of minimal in terms of where Australian politics is at already. Right. And an end to privatisation, Di Natale's up there talking about a publicly owned energy retailer. So I don't really understand. Maybe, I suppose a billionaire's tax or caps on CEOs' salaries is the distinction that the federal party under Di Natale was willing to push for these kind of positive wealth redistribution or economic reforms, but wasn't willing to identify the villain and go after wealthy people and corporations. Was that the conflict at this time, do you think?
Yeah, I think, the idea of bringing something that has been privatised back into public ownership is a far more, certainly in the landscape of Australian politics, far more radical approach. And yes, you'll find Labor governments and Labor, will be much more open to creating new publicly owned bodies to compete with the private actors.
I think Labor would say because this is what I mean if you're pointing to Queensland. Well, the Queensland Greens had a policy that they brought to the election to create a new publicly owned bank. It wasn't to renationalise. And I don't think that Labor's going, oh yeah, reasonable. I think they would be going, that's cuckoo bananas, publicly owned bank. The Greens are crazy. They're in fairyland.
Yes. Well, of course. Yes. Some Labor-aligned think tanks have published research saying that they support a publicly owned bank.
Yeah, but
I think it makes more sense to turn the Reserve Bank into a public bank, a bank that people could go to. That would sort of make sense. That is still a publicly owned federal bank. You could just, extend their remit and make them better. And have branches. But anyway, I don't fucking know. Neither of it's happening.
Yeah, I find this conflict really interesting because sometimes it does feel like I get and I admire this constant kind of pushing, we need to go further, we need to be more radical from the New South Wales left factions. But it's weird because the way that Paddy Manning tells it, I'm like, oh, the Greens were kind of doing cool stuff. But I know that wasn't, there was an apparent internal conflict at the time.
Well, Shoebridge and Di Natale, of course, are also on different sides of the whole left renewal idea. And as we covered last time, Di Natale said, if you want the end of capitalism, get out of the party. These left, of course, the Greens don't support ending capitalism or anything ridiculous like that. Shoebridge and Lee Rhiannon wrote pieces saying, hey, you could be a socialist and be in the Greens and you can criticise capitalism.
So I think it does come down to, and this is still a debate, I reckon, that is had throughout the Greens, which is like, are you willing to identify the enemy? That's what I come back to. It's you can be like, oh yeah, we should do these, things, the socialist policies are great, like public ownership and even, reducing the working week, that kind of thing. But whether you go, and we should reduce the wealth of the super wealthy, whether it's franking credits or a tax on billionaires or caps on CEO salaries, that kind of thing. Maybe that's where some people in the party are like, oh, I don't know, that's a bit nasty.
Yeah. Are you prepared to embrace class war or not? Whereas Di Natale tried to take sort of almost both. He's like policies that would indicate a level of class war while eschewing all the language surrounding that or speaking upfront and honestly about an anti-capitalist narrative as to what led him to those kind of results.
Yeah, they refused to set up a conflict between the interests of the ruling, like the capitalist class and the working class. Instead, they're just like, well, we can improve the lives of the workers while retaining the ability of capital to accumulate freely, quote unquote, freely. And I don't necessarily think that is true. I think you do need to actually, you need to attack the power of the wealthy and their wealth more specifically.
Amid this internal battle of ideas, two crucial pre-selections were underway in New South Wales. Kate Fairman had resigned as Di Natale's Chief of Staff, hoping to win the party's nomination to fill the vacancy left by Faruqi when she went to the Senate. During a stint in the Leader's office, Fairman had joined the Victorian Greens and assumed her membership would now be automatically transferred to New South Wales. Instead, in a bit of factional game playing, the branch counted her as a new member, which meant she was ineligible to run for pre-selection for 3 months. With the deadline for nominations closing, Fairman went straight to the Supreme Court with an urgent application to have her membership transferred immediately. She won with costs and went on to successfully contest the pre-selection. Okay. Does seem a tad dodgy to me.
Yeah, look, all's fair in love and war. All's fair in love and factional war.
Christ. The do-or-die pre-selection battle was between Jeremy Buckingham and David Shoebridge in a contest for first place on the party's upper house ticket for the 2019 state election.
I remember this.
You remember this? Under the zipper principle, which was designed to ensure equal representation, the loser would be relegated to third place on the ticket, considered unwinnable. Given that the so-called right of the party had won 3 successive pre-selections, Field, Walker and Faruqi, The battle was seen as a final showdown. Again, why is Phew on the right of the party? But anyway, there you go. The battle was seen as a final showdown between the warring factions. Shoebridge was unofficial leader of the left of the New South Wales party room and had racked up substantial wins, including working with Hunter Valley Police whistleblower Peter Fox to push for the Royal Commission into child sex abuse, moving for the New South Wales parliamentary inquiry into the Barrowville murders, campaigning for gun control by taking on the shooters lobby and launching the TooManyGuns.org public database, and fighting forced council amalgamations. If Shoebridge lost to Buckingham, many of the party's left-wing stalwarts were ready to quit. The left of the party had already lodged a belated complaint against Buckingham, seeking to suspend or even expel him for his comments to Four Corners in 2017. The complaint was dropped only after Buckingham ally Justin Field went public and denounced the tactic on Facebook. So much Facebook drama in all this history.
Wait, what comments to Four Corners?
This was, we touched on it briefly in the last episode. There was a big story around the Lee Rhiannon, Gonski take and the kind of what was happening in the New South Wales Green at the time. And Jeremy Buckingham threw a few comments out there to the ABC, sticking his oar in. The right accused the left of branch stacking, recruiting members of the Socialist Alliance to the Greens. Imagine trying to get people to join the Greens.
Crazy idea.
The left of the party say these allegations have never been substantiated. Shoebridge beat Buckingham comfortably by 1,161 to 780 votes. Lee Rhiannon soon announced her resignation after more than 18 years in state and federal parliament for the Greens, giving Phew time to establish a national profile. At the party's national conference in Brisbane in May, glass-half-full types argued that the result of the two key pre-selections was ideal. Nobody got everything they wanted, and a balance had been struck with Shoebridge and Fairman. The members had voted for unity and for moving on from the wars of the past. These optimists would prove sadly mistaken. Yeah, a real narrator, that's not what happened kind of moment.
Also, nobody got everything they wanted. When will people learn that that's not what a good outcome looks like and doesn't mean that everyone's just going to happily sit down then?
Right. Yeah. I mean, some people, would say, yes, if you get this resolved and everyone got something but not everyone got everything, then it's less, maybe the people who are upset are less likely to burn the whole thing down.
But these people are involved in electoral politics. They're a member of a political party. They're psychos. Like, they're not going to be like, yay, I got a little something.
Got a little something.
Otherwise, we wouldn't want it. We love them for it.
Yeah, I mean, in your year, to the extent that you can talk about that, have you seen a lot of this kind of internal skullduggery? Do you think this kind of factional stuff is worse for the Greens? And when it gets all messy, I mean, people say this is an argument for formalised factions. Yes, there's a lot of backstabbing and there's been a lot of messiness in the Labor Party, but at least there is a formalised faction system in which you can sort of, there are appropriate, people acknowledge that there are factions, there are divisions within the party, and you kind of resolve issues that way, sort of.
Do you resolve issues that way, though? Like, I feel as though there's so much underhandedness and backstabbing and, like, bending the rule, using the rules to your advantage in Labor. I've wondered this too. Like, I don't really have an issue with acknowledging that there are factions, but I don't really know that it's necessary or would add all that much for the Greens. What would it do? What would it fix? What would it stop?
I mean, well, I guess it comes up again and again. Obviously, yes, there are different factions between the different state branches. But it all sort of goes unsaid, right? There's this assumption that, hey, we're all in the Greens, we all have the same politics, right? And these people you're betraying what the Greens are about. And other people saying you're betraying what the Greens are about. And if you're aligned with certain formal factions within that party based around certain ideas, then I guess you could sort of say, well, listen, being upfront, like this is why I'm in the Greens, and I respect the existence of other elements of the Greens of the party, and at least we have a process to resolve those differences. And we have a system which means that, there is different representation of the factions in certain appointments. Although then maybe that wouldn't work. That would undermine democracy stuff too.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I think that then where you end up with all these like quotas and attempts to make it fair, acknowledging that everyone disagrees with each other, when actually the disagreement is maybe the important part. Maybe it's good to be constantly having a debate about what the party is for and what it believes in and what it's about to try and decide on a collective movement. I mean, it in a way, I guess, maybe people who argue against formalised factions within the Greens, there's an argument that it is inconsistent with the idea of consensus. Because if you're just going, yeah, well, I get this much of a say and you get that much of a say and that's it. You don't have to nut it out for hours on the floor of a state conference.
True. And I think the best system is, have lots of debates. Sure, there's going to be disagreements, there's going to be fights. Put it to a vote, a free and fair election amongst the membership, and everyone, if they really do believe in grassroots democracy, should accept the results of those results of those elections. So when we hear stuff like, if this person doesn't win, I'm thinking of leaving the party. Well, I guess that's their right to leave their party, but you should sort of say, a membership vote after, a decent amount of good faith debate. You take the win or you accept the loss and you move on. Yeah. All right. Now, if you'll indulge me, I think it's worth reading this next section in full because we're obviously getting into some pretty messy stuff here and it's important, I think, to get the details. In June 2017, a freelance writer, Lauren Ingram, went public on Facebook with a sensational allegation that a Green staffer, whom she named, had raped her 2 years earlier. In her thread, Ingram detailed the assault, her admission to hospital, and disappointment with the police investigation. She also accused the Greens of failing to act, although 4 other women had made complaints about the same man, including one rape accusation almost identical to hers. The Greens claim to be against violence against women, but don't act when one of their office holders is a serial abuser, Ingram said. So fuck the New South Wales Greens and how they pretend to care about women. Ingram's accusation went off like a grenade and became national news when she did an interview with ABC Radio National's Background Briefing, along with other women who corroborated her story. The man, who had worked for state MPs and on the 2016 federal election campaign, was finally suspended. Until Ingram's complaint, the New South Wales Greens had no policy on sexual assault and harassment. The party, which prided itself on an inclusive and safe culture, had been caught napping, to say the least. Was it an isolated incident, or was there a systemic or cultural issue at play? Around the same time, the ABC reported that on the night of the 2016 federal election, a young female volunteer for the ACT Greens had been sexually assaulted by a man, also a Greens volunteer. The woman, who wished to remain anonymous, had a sympathetic witness who told the female campaign manager what had happened. The victim had not gone to the police until the following February because she didn't want to disrupt the party's ACT election campaign in October. The police told her too much time had elapsed. Like Ingram, the woman was bitterly disappointed by the party's response to her complaint. The ACT Greens tried to keep a lid on the whole thing, but it snowballed. Another volunteer, Zach Girardello, stepped in as the young woman's advocate and told the ABC the Greens had handled the whole thing really poorly. I would say the culture in the party was poisonous, it was toxic. Aggravating the situation, the Greens leader in the Territory, Shane Rattenbury, told the ABC he thought the distressing claims had been dealt with by the party's management committee when they hadn't. The Me Too movement exploded in October 2017. On the cover of its Christmas issue, under the headline Exclusive, How the Greens Failed Me Over Rape, the Saturday paper published the anonymous woman's story in her own words. She was utterly scathing of the party's response. Her assailant was stood down from volunteering duties, but was not told it was for misconduct, and he had been invited to a Greens function. That's wild that you get stood down and not told why. And
yeah.
He was thanked in the post-election review, and she wasn't, and the report was sanitised to remove damning references to the assault. She wrote, "The ACT Greens have consistently sought to delegitimise me and my story, adopting the rhetoric of victim blaming. We can't help someone that doesn't want to cooperate. You were flirting with him before the election night. Institutional unaccountability. It's an issue between two third parties. We have no responsibility. And outright denial. There's 2 sides to every story." I'm not paraphrasing this. Every quote here and those that follow is pulled from correspondence between myself, other members and party leaders. You've seen the billboards, placards and stickers standing up for what matters. How cruel and cynical that representation seems to be now in hindsight. How dangerous and misleading to the hordes of young people searching for a safe community to call their own. What do you think about all that?
What do I think about all that? I do remember that it felt like around this time, and it was also, as you say, it was the Me Too movement was going at this time.
Yep.
And there was a lot of work that had to be done to update internal party policies to make sure that this kind of monumental fuck up of the way something like this would be handled didn't happen again. And like I will say, I mean, yeah, like how do you deal with a cultural, a social problem like sexism, misogyny, assault, rape? As an institution, I don't think there's a perfect way to respond to that as it comes up, but like this wasn't it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's where when people are like, I mean, it's a similar question that comes up when people ask, are the Greens a racist party? Is there a systemic racism issue within the Greens? This question of, is there a systemic or cultural issue at play in terms of sexism or sexual assault in the Greens? And it's like, well, yeah, there is a systemic and cultural issue at play because it's Australia in 20, whatever, you know, like, yes, there is.
Yes.
Broadly. And no political party, no institution is immune to that. And maybe there was an assumption that because the Greens wanted to be immune from that, wanted to be a movement that opposed that, and were like, we're a group of good people, that they did think that they could be and didn't have to worry about it and didn't think about how they would address it when it did happen. And that's kind of what it seems like happened here. They were just so like, oh, well, no, it couldn't happen to us, which is
surely
ignorant and, you know, even plays in some of the worst tropes around sexual assault, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so hard to sort of put yourself in a pre-Me Too mindset. I mean, when you read that the New South Wales Greens had no policy on this at all, that sounds insane. I think that is wild, but certainly, yes, we do have to, again, reckon with how much the world has changed post-Me Too. And, you know, you would perhaps say that, unfortunately, and this is damning, but these kind of policies come up in response to horrible things happening and scandals, you know, scandals popping through, right? Like, and these are... Well, I don't want to dismiss it by saying it's growing pains, but yes, this as the party grows and in theory becomes more professional and you institute more structures and that kind of thing, then that's when these kind of policies set up. But yeah, it does seem in both these cases it was a complete dereliction of duty and very sad to hear even, Greens people who we think overwhelmingly are good people who want a better world going into politic mode and trying to minimise damage as opposed to thinking about what's the most moral approach to this kind of issue and how best to deal with it.
Yeah.
But don't worry, everyone. Bob Brown is here to help.
Oh, good.
The paper's next issue had a letter from Bob Brown describing the incident as a violent predatory rape and criticising the victim for failing to report the incident to the police immediately. The ACT Greens could not and should not have been expected to substitute for the criminal justice system, he wrote, defending Rattenbury and suggesting the paper should have a look at the journalist's code of ethics. Brown's letter caused uproar. Lauren Ingram tweeted, "This is disgusting from Bob Brown. He's defending a man as decent and considerate and giving no thought to a victim of sexual assault. He should also be well aware that the justice system doesn't work for most victims of rape."
Yes.
She posted a response from the victim who said that a man who I looked up to my whole life was paving the way for progressive people, Greens members, voters and environmentalists to adopt his cause and defile women and their supporters who stand up for their rights to bodily autonomy and freedom from institutional neglect. David Shoebridge, at this time a state MP, accused Brown of appalling disrespect to a victim of sexual abuse. Richard
not a
Di
good
Natale,
look. Sorry.
Not good. That's right. Di Natale, trying to control the situation, told The Australian, "I recognise how difficult it is for victims of sexual assault to take action and have their voices heard within the legal system, and we must do better if they are to receive justice."
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think that's true. The only element I would say is that, like, there is another legal consideration that the party would have to consider in that. You know, my understanding is if you let go, stood down, or fired someone because of an allegation of sexual assault, that person could potentially have legal recourse, you know, for defamation, for wrongful dismissal. So,
Yeah.
you know, you know what I mean? And I know the legal system is totally fucked for victims of sexual assault, and we know how low those prosecution rates. And again, the police in this instance said, yeah, too much time has passed, and victims get accused of not reporting it immediately, et cetera, et cetera. We know about those failings. But I just suppose on the other side, occasionally the party would find itself in a bind to be like, volunteers is probably a different question, but yeah, in terms of employees or MPs, as we'll see, as we're about to see with another case that the party dealt with, it gets a lot more complicated, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the legal
Bob
risk.
Brown led her bad, but to be very,
Bob
very
Brown
clear.
led her bad.
Bob Brown led her bad. Just saying that's probably another consideration to play into some of these cases from the other end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Like worrying about defamation actions. Yeah, just get legal advice on how to word your statement. I don't know.
Right.
I think that the risk, there are significant risks on either side, and so you should probably take the one that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, go with that. If any Australian political party was going to take a hit from the Me Too movement, the Greens might at first have seemed the most unlikely, because we're the best ones. But as a party with a strongly feminist tradition and membership, it was also logical that any sexual misconduct would be vigorously debated. The next allegation did not take long to surface, and the rancour threatened to split the party irrevocably. Ella Buckland was a young Greens activist from the Northern Rivers who had worked for the New South Wales MP Jan Barham in 2011-2012. 5 years later, still doing occasional volunteer work for the party, Buckland bumped into David Shoebridge at Nimbin's Mardi Gras Festival. Very Greens story here. Shoebridge mentioned there could be work coming up in his office, and she should apply. In early 2018, after seeing Shoebridge's post attacking Bob Brown over the ACT Greens case, Buckland got in touch and told him that Jeremy Buckingham, who was about to go up against him in a federal pre-selection, had assaulted her at an after-work drinks in 2011. Shoebridge offered his support and suggested Buckland get legal advice. She did, and complained to the party in April, which was referred to external firm Work Dynamics for independent investigation. Someone leaked the Buckland allegation to the ABC, which began to investigate. As yet, Buckingham knew nothing about Buckland's allegation, but the pre-selection contest between him and Shoebridge was already getting ugly. At the end of April, a phone picture of Buckingham making a lewd gesture at a pub trivia night to raise funds for the party, apparently simulating cunnilingus, was posted on social media, and someone tipped off the Daily Telegraph, which pounced. I do remember this, and I remember it being...
was this around the time, though? I do remember that gesture, which I will not... you know the gesture. It's you put your hands like that.
I don't know that. But what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. Like, what does it represent?
That's really...
Can you explain it to me?
You're not going to get me to do it. But I also think that was just like a thing to do at the time. Like, I remember being like a teenager. Maybe this was a little bit before this, but I remember doing that pose in photos, not really knowing that that's what it was meant to simulate.
Oh, okay, right.
Sorry. Why am I defending Jeremy Buckingham? I'm not. Never mind. Yeah.
He was just a teenage boy. He was also,
never mind.
What, in his 30s and an MP maybe? Anyway. Over April and May, New Matilda published half a dozen stories attacking Buckingham or his colleagues on the right of the party. Some were written by a Greens member, Michael Brawl, who had nominated Shoebridge for pre-selection, and another was by Shoebridge staffer Lauren Gillen. These connections were only partly disclosed. Shoebridge won the pre-selection comfortably, but the battle was far from over. Again, I do remember this kind of atmosphere and some of these names, big on X, then Twitter.
Oh, Lauren Gillen was huge on X. Is she still posting?
No idea. You have a look up. Look it up for me. The ABC 7:30.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were actually telling me to look up.
Yeah, go on, have a look. What are we doing?
I'm not on
Lauren
X anymore.
Gillen. Yeah, okay, right. That's probably a
surely
better way
not.
to be. Oh, that's Laura Gillen for Congress. The ABC 7:30 contacted Buckingham armed with Buckland's allegation, saying they planned to air a story in 2 or 3 days. The substance of the allegation was that Buckland, Buckingham and another woman had gone back to his home in inner-city Newtown. Buckland had taken some video on her phone showing Buckingham drunk and partying in his kitchen and apparently flirting with the other woman, a party volunteer. After that, Buckland said she and Buckingham and the other woman had headed out back towards King Street. On the way, she alleged Buckingham had grabbed at her crotch, to which she said no loudly and walked off. Buckingham denied the alleged assault occurred. In fact, he denied that the three had ever left the flat together. He was backed up by the other woman present, which the ABC neglected to mention. The 7:30 story, when it went to air, including the messy video shot in his home and pre-recorded interviews with Buckland and Shoebridge, was extremely damaging to Buckingham, although it did include a reference to his denial. It was also damaging to the Greens because it suggested that Buckland had been fobbed off by a staffer when she contacted the office of leader Richard Di Natale, and because it harked back to the 2 earlier incidents with Lauren Ingram and the ACT Greens. Di Natale's office was dumbfounded at the suggestion the complaint had been fobbed off, given his chief of staff, Rod Goodman, had engaged directly with Buckland, explaining that the federal parliamentary party leader was explicitly excluded from having a role in sexual harassment complaints and obtaining her permission to refer the matter to the party's national co-convener. Goodman had tried to check in with Buckland about progress through July on a number of occasions, but she did not respond to those contacts. Lee Rhiannon called on Buckingham to stand aside pending the external investigation, but he refused, insisting the allegations were false and part of a factional attack on him. When Work Dynamics had finished its investigation, a draft report was circulated to the party. Buckingham and Buckland. Buckingham, desperate to clear his name, went public with the findings straight away. The investigator was not satisfied that there is sufficient evidence on the balance of probabilities that an incident of sexual harassment as defined by the legislation occurred, and had recommended the party resolve the matter with no adverse findings against you, that's Jeremy Buckingham, with respect to sexual harassment and inappropriate behaviour. Buckingham and his supporters thought he was cleared. Buckland was devastated. Is there much to add here, or it's just what a fucking shit show?
Yeah, I don't know. I just of course this is the whole thing with sexual assault, is that it's generally not recorded, and so very difficult to substantiate. So yeah, I'm sure there wasn't sufficient evidence. I mean, balance of probabilities, that's subjective. I do just think that any suggestion that you would go out of your way to make this allegation for political reasons, factional reasons, knowing the consequences for you is ludicrous. I just cannot imagine why Ella Buckland would say this if it hadn't happened.
Yeah, true. But yes, but then Bucky, says, well, there was this process. Here's the report, clears my name.
Sure. Yeah. There's a report that quote unquote cleared your name. We will never really know. But on the balance of probabilities based on what you've said, seems like this Buckingham guy kind of sucks. So
in the immediate aftermath of the 7:30 report, on a sunny winter's day at Sydney's Opera House Bar, Bob Brown sat down with half the Green MPs in the New South Wales Parliament. The 4 state Upper House MPs were Jeremy Buckingham, Kate Fairman, Justin Field and Dawn Walker, dissed as tree Tories, or simply the right, by their factional opponents in the New South Wales Greens. They were talking about the future of their party and specifically whether to keep working with the troubled state branch or split off completely. Brown's view was that the party's name was too important to leave to the old guard of New South Wales, whom he'd fought on and off for decades. Nonetheless, according to those present, Brown said quite clearly, "If you go, I'll stand with you." A photo shows the Greens founder and the 4 MPs hand over outstretched hand in a kind of pact. What the fuck is going on?
What is this nonsense? Oh my God. Yeah, this is where it's is anyone doing any work? Is anyone... don't you have shit to do?
The planet is on fire.
Yeah.
The trees, Bob. Think of the trees. All right. I will try my best to summarize these as we go. But there are basically a whole bunch of motions to try and remove Buckingham from the party. Again, Buckingham and his supporters on the right saying, no, this isn't happening because we've got this report and that's not a fair process. Luke Foley, the New South Wales Labor leader, resigns after ABC reporter Ashley Raper went public with a groping allegation dating back 2 years. Lee Rhiannon says, hey, see, that's what we should do. Jeremy Buckingham threatens defamation proceedings against a bunch of people. And eventually Jenny Leong stands up in the parliamentary party room, says enough is enough. She insists that Buckingham resigns from Parliament. She denounces him under parliamentary privilege, also says that he's behaved aggressively towards her. She apologises to Buckland and the other alleged victims and women that she feels like the party has let down. In Canberra, the Federal Party is taken by surprise, both by Leong's dramatic intervention and by the accompanying joint statement by Leong and Senator Marine Faruqi. They felt there was no option but to support the call by both women for Buckingham to stand aside. Buckingham was furious and told Dean Natali so. In the New South Wales party room, the split was deepening. The next day, Buckingham's long-term factional ally, Kate Fairman, wrote a piece for the Sydney Morning Herald defending him. She says it's extremely distressing for me, as it is for many women and Greens members, to see allegations of sexual harassment and assault, including the party's handling of these, being used as a political weapon. I urge my colleague Jenny Leong to make a complaint via formal party processes if she has new allegations following her speech. I'll be the first to call on Jeremy Buckingham to resign if an investigation shows that he behaved inappropriately. All very messy. In Victoria, Victorian Greens leader Greg Barber resigned quite suddenly, and around this time it would also emerge in the media that he had quit after reaching a $56,000 confidential settlement with a former staffer who alleged sex discrimination, bullying and victimisation during her 5-year stint in his office.
Totally missed this. This is...
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never knew anything about Greg Barber at all, to be honest. It sort of predates my time. I think he was a founding member, I believe, with Janet Rice way back at the start of the Victorian Greens. So there's this confidentiality agreement. The woman involved, Liz Ingram, broke her silence. She told ABC her experience working for Barber caused work-related depression for many years. The Greens don't care what happens to women within the party. Her husband, Trevor Kuhn, told the ABC that Barber had constantly referred to women in the workplace as fat, hairy lesbians, power pussies, and hairy-legged feminists, and accused him of having a men's room in his office. Barber refused to discuss the complaint or defend himself, citing the confidentiality agreement.
That
Barber
does ring a bell, maybe from attack flyers.
Yes, I think all of this stuff has been picked up by good friends at Advance Australia and was used as, a regular attack against the Greens not caring about women. At the same time, you had a Labor dirt unit set about researching the party's candidates and soon drip-fed a series of shit-posting scandals into the media. Some were funny, but some were very serious, like the stories about Footscray candidate Angus McAlpine, a pierced and tattooed plumber originally from Ballarat, who was also a rap singer for a hip-hop band called Broken Aesthetics. Some of his lyrics were offensively misogynist, including references to the date rape drug Rohypnol. McAlpine, so this is all big for me. This is my seat. This is the seat I live in. All the Westies that regularly talk about the process of vetting candidates. Not that necessarily that Angus wouldn't have been pre-selected, but the fact that this information just did not come up in the pre-selection process, so that they didn't have a strategy.
There was no plan for how to deal with it. Yeah,
right. He apologised for the rap-related lyrics. This is pretty crazy. It didn't stop the stories, so of course they drip feed the stories as they find more rap lyrics or wait for him to apologise and then bring out a new lyric. He appeared to rap about how it was nothing for him to choke a bitch, although he insisted the lyric was a reference to smoking marijuana. The Greens and leader Samantha Ratnam, stood by McAlpine, but some senior women inside the party were agog that he had ever been pre-selected. Premier Daniel Andrews did not waste the opportunity, saying the Greens had a toxic cultural problem around women and ruling out any negotiations or alliance with them should they win the balance of power.
Do we really need to do the, are rappers serious in their songs and are all their lyrics real? And, I mean, that's a bit tired, isn't it? But yes, certainly an argument for better candidate vetting, knowing that this would be a risk.
But this, I mean, I don't know much about Angus, to be honest, but he was a working class dude. He was, had really deep ties to the community. I think was, a guy that he owned up to his past. He apologized for those things. He had clearly been on a massive change of his politics, right? And once again, I say, if we want young people involved in fucking politics, and the idea that we can dig up old posts from 10 or 12 years ago, that might be bad, but can be resolved by an apology and by an explanation of where you've moved since then, that should be the end of it. The fact that people are losing their candidacies over this stuff is outrageous, and just leads. It's just a perfect way for older people to hang on to power, and for us to produce the most boring, just restrict the pool of people who run for public office in this country to a very select group of people who either have never done anything
Interesting.
normal in their lives or
Yeah.
are much better at hiding all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Or haven't posted anything dodgy because they know from the age of 14 that they're going to seek pre-selection in their late 20s or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, the state election isn't too horrific in Victoria for the Greens. The primary vote is down by 1%. But of course, thanks to our wonderful group voting system, which we still have in the great state of Victoria, after preferences, we get a bit of a wipeout. 4 of the 5 upper house seats go.
Whoa.
Only Sam Ratnam is left in the upper house. Lydia is voted out. Ellen Sandell has returned. Sam Himmonds just scrapes in Paran, which never becomes a problem for anyone at any point further down the line. Dr. Tim Reid wins in Brunswick. That was sort of one bit of good news for the party. And I'd just like to give a very brief shout out to Tim, very good friend of the show, Dr. Tim, who announced this week he won't be recontesting due to a cancer diagnosis. He seems to be doing okay. He's going through this treatment, which does seem to be working, but he's just not well enough to campaign again and serve another 4 years. We love you, Dr. Tim Reid, who's been pictured wearing a Serious Danger t-shirt.
A true danger dog.
A true danger dog. And would love to have him on the show in the coming months to talk about where he's at. He sent out this big email to all members sort of saying, this is me stepping down. People getting cancer is a great reason why we should have Vic Health, which was set up in the late 80s, which this Victorian Labor government has just announced they're going to abolish, which is a truly bizarre.
Labor values.
There you go. All right. We're almost there, everyone. We're almost at the end, Emerald, I promise.
Are we? Is there more? Is there more sexual assault?
There is more sexual assault. I'm sorry. Yes. Well, the Buckingham.
Fuck. Are you serious? I thought you were going to say surely not.
Yeah. We just got to wrap up the Buckingham stuff and then we can get to the 2019 election.
Okay.
In New South Wales, just 3 months out from the state election in March 2019, the Greens were in the process of splitting. Jeremy Buckingham refused to stand down, and the MPs who continued to support him, Kate Fairman, Justin Field and Dawn Walker, issued an open letter to party members calling for signatures to support the removal of destructive left forces within the party. The New South Wales Greens is at a crossroads and urgent action is necessary to prevent an irrevocable split of the party. The New South Wales Greens have been undermined by a deliberate and systematic effort by a small group of members motivated by extreme left ideology. Theirs is a deeply divisive form of politics that poisons goodwill and destabilised our core principles as Greens. Left Renewal was formed almost 2 years ago, and since then a large group of people from the entryist revolutionary socialist organisation Solidarity have joined and become active in the New South Wales Greens. None of that. No one should join. No one become active. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Their involvement and combative approach to the party has never been endorsed and has even been endorsed and encouraged by a few current and recent Greens MPs and senior party officials. Outrageous. Finally, in December 2018, after a motion calling on him to stand down past the State Delegates Council, Buckingham quit the party, calling a press conference out the back of State Parliament and ripping up a piece of paper reading "Toxic New South Wales Greens." I remember this. It was so lame.
Yeah. Yeah, really
He
cringe.
printed it off.
Really cringe stuff.
Held it up. Give it a rip.
Yeah.
He announced he would run as an independent real Green, challenging the state party's Marxist agenda. On the ABC's Radio National. Yeah. On the ABC's Radio National breakfast next morning, Buckingham took a shot at the left of the party for wanting to distance itself from the founder. If you think that one of the most successful progressive politicians in Australia's history, Bob Brown, is a right-winger, you've got to be pretty extreme. Well, maybe you could just disagree with some of the positions that Bob Brown adopted. Because, as we've learned, he was in a meeting with a bunch of right-wing Greens MPs sort of saying, yes, let's blow up this party over this.
Yeah, the way that the factions play out in New South Wales do make me think that maybe like obsessive overt factionalism can send people a little bit crazy, where you're just like, this person's politics are completely different to me, and so they are an enemy. That's probably not all that productive, is it?
No, not at all.
Not sorry. To clarify, I'm not saying that just because someone has different politics from you doesn't make them an enemy. What I'm saying is, if they are in the Greens, it's quite likely that you share some politics.
Yeah.
And your task should be to, you can tweak their politics a little bit, acknowledging the differences, but campaign for what you believe in.
Yeah. I think that's probably pretty fair. I mean, it looks like the party almost did split. There was a serious suggestion that might be the case. The party was working on better processes. Eventually, Richard Di Natale kind of brings it all together. He was almost on the verge of quitting himself, contemplated walking away from the leadership, but eventually a compromise was reached. He managed to bring everyone together. And Di Natale says, I spent weeks negotiating with people from all sides of New South Wales to broker an agreement that would keep the party together. It remains one of my most important achievements. Then they have a New South Wales state election, and it's actually not a disaster again. Sue Higginson was going to run, and she was close to winning, but she didn't quite get there. Overall, they went from 8 to 6 MPs, but after the poll, all members committed to mediation, and the public brawling stopped pending the outcome of the review. Without his name above the line, Buckingham was doomed, and none of his candidates elected. He's still in there, though, isn't he? Isn't he with legalised cannabis? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, then he joined legalised cannabis later. Okay. Yeah.
So that's our best attempt to summarise the very, very messy indeed and very depressing moments of instability in the New South Wales Greens in 2017, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, the 2019 federal election. Now, we spent a little bit of time on this in previous episodes of the show, but this is pretty much where the chapter wraps up, and this is pretty much where Paddy Manning ends the story of where the Greens are at. Of course, the book coming out after the 2019 election. What should we say about this? The whole approach for the Greens in 2019 was defend. They were worried. Now they changed the upper house voting system that they were going to lose a few Senate seats, and basically said, let's hang on to what we've got, particularly as those Senate seats would be held by all women. Maureen Faruqi, Larissa Waters and Sarah Hanson-Young were considered to be in danger. Adding to that tension was the general expectation of a Labor victory following the replacement of Malcolm Turnbull with Morrison. Historically, the Greens vote suffers when the coalition is in power and a swing is on, and progressive voters worry their vote will be wasted. What's more, the CFMEU and Electoral Trades Union had swung in behind Labor's heavily union-backed campaign. This would hit Adam Bandt in Melbourne particularly hard, as the ETU alone had donated more than $780,000 to his campaign since 2010. The Greens also faced a policy challenge heading into the 2019. Under Bill Shorten, Labor had tacked left, in many cases adopting the minor party's policies: a National Integrity Commission, reform of discretionary trusts, negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions. They gained a bit of momentum. Di Natale gave a big speech, sort of basically giving it what for to the Morrison government, saying that you've just focused on yourselves. You don't deserve to govern. You deserve to be turfed out. That speech was watched 2 million times. He was pretty angry.
Well,
yeah.
Wasn't this the one? Yeah, you're an embarrassment. Wasn't it in the context of, it was talking about climate as well? Like it was like, you're an embarrassment because you're just talking about yourselves and the planet is burning kind of vibe. Yeah, that was one of those it was a bit of an early viral speech moment.
A withering speech at the height of the August coup against Turnbull. Yeah, it is. I mean, again, this is as from memory. Tonali's finishing up in 2018. I think we've probably been cancelled at this point, but we still have 6 weeks on air. And running alongside that was the serious suggestion that Turnbull was going to be knifed and that Peter Dutton was potentially going to be the next Prime Minister of the country. We had some pretty funny jokes about it. Anyway. You also had the Medivac legislation, which I didn't realise was a strategy cooked up in Adam Bandt's office to amend a dormant government bill in the Senate, which could then pass the House on a simple majority without suspending standing orders, skirting the Greens' usual problem where a private member's bill languished indefinitely. It was not only the first time in 90 years that a government had been defeated on the floor of the House, it was also the first time since 2010 that Labor had stared down the possibility of a coalition scare campaign on border protection. God, remember that? Well, imagine that. The Green Senator Jordan Steele-John, in barely a year in Parliament, had spoken passionately on behalf of people with a disability who suffered abuse at the hands of carers and others, and in February succeeded in getting up a referral for a Royal Commission. He was then unafraid to wheel himself into the House of Representatives and, literally shouting at the chamber, call on the government to commit to a timetable and funding. Fuck yeah, Jordan.
King.
More than anything else, however, 2019 was billed as a climate election. The Greens renewed their calls to phase out coal exports and made the Adani's Carmichael coal mine the centrepiece of their messaging on climate and a clear point of difference between themselves and Labor. episode 56 of this show. We had a big old chat. It was our Christmas episode, and we had a big old chat about the Stop Adani convoy, featuring Emerald Moon's involvement with her little earrings.
Yes. Well, this was my election. This was Emerald Moon for Bowman 2019, taking on Andrew Lamming, alleged upskirter. Denies these allegations. Yeah, it was a real time for me. This was my peak, perhaps.
Yes, definitely listen to that episode if you want to hear all that Emerald Moon, the candidate, and Stop Adani. How about this quote? Felicity Wade, a former campaigner for the Wilderness Society and the Labor Environmental Action Network, LEAN, says the Greens perpetuate conflict over the environment for electoral gain and draws a parallel between the convoy and the 2012 Tasmanian Forest Agreement. Brown and Mild tried to kill the TFA with all their might, says Wade. Part of it is perfect over the good, but why is perfect over the good so important to them? Because Labor being crap and failing is essential to them keeping up their vote. And you see the Green vote collapse when the Tasmanian forest issue is no longer a hot political issue.
So close. Maybe it's because Labor is crap and failing that the Greens exist and point it out.
Yes.
Like maybe the Greens, an electoral project, exist to make electoral gains.
Yes.
In order to solve this perpetual conflict over the environment and save the environment. Yeah, it's just like so backwards.
So backwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good thing Labor never adopts any kind of policy position to try and increase
Well,
their
that's the
vote
thing.
as
It's
well.
real deflection. Like it is so Labor-brained to be like, well, this all must just be about strategy and keeping your own institution alive. It's like,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Maybe be more
different
angry
when
about
you're
Labor
doing the
being
right thing.
crap than the Greens pointing it out would be
Yeah.
my advice.
Yeah.
Sad meerkat face. Tough week.
Tough week.
Do you see Adam Vance out there as head of the ACF? He's sort of
He's doing great.
He's
It's
in the
funny because
news.
it's really similar to just seeing him in my feed as the member for Melbourne and leader of the Greens. So I can pretend that we've wound back the clock a little bit.
By and large, the Greens struggled for attention in an election that was dominated by a coalition scare campaign about Labor's tax plans and dubbed Australia's first post-truth campaign. One of the most misleading claims stoked fears that a Labor government had done a deal with the Greens and their unions to introduce a 40% death tax if elected. This was an old bogey for the Greens, who had adopted an ambiguous position of supporting an inheritance tax in principle, but not including one in its official pre-election platform. That was awkwardly handled. The party star candidate for the blue ribbon Liberal seat of Kooyong, celebrated human rights lawyer Julian Burnside, told ABC Melbourne that some form of inheritance tax makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, but
not wrong.
this is the thing that, like, as a candidate, we were directed, and maybe this isn't particularly because it was like we didn't have time to brief all of you little low-level candidates running across the country, but we were kind of directed, if they bring up a death tax, just be like, oh, well, it's not in the platform that we're bringing to the election, which really, now I think of it, like terrible approach, terrible response. It is in the policy platform of the Greens. Yep. Defend your policies.
Yeah. Yep. Explain why. Yeah. I do remember the Larissa interview where she was saying, yes, in the policy platform, but we're not talking about this election. It's like, what?
Yeah, no one knows what that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Although the main focus was to hang on to sitting MPs, in Melbourne, the party's attention shifted south of the Yarra, so talking about trying to win Higgins, Jason Ball for the Greens. The vote actually went slightly backwards. Burnside got a swing towards him, but Frydenberg remained safe. Could the Greens ever win wealthy Liberal seats running on a left-wing platform? More tantalising was Canberra, where former Milne staffer Tim Hollow won 24% of the primary vote, but still ran third. At least Bant held Melbourne, a foregone conclusion. Oh, it hurts. It hurts.
Oh.
Most importantly, the Australian Greens had held on to all their Senate seats with a swing to the party of 1.6%, lifting the national vote to 10.2% after 3 difficult years in which hard-won gains on legislation and policy were marred by party room brawls and organisational toxicity and failure. In both houses, it was the best result since 2010. The primary vote actually went up 5% in South Australia and up by 3% in Queensland, despite all the Stop Adani hoo-ha, which is always a good thing to keep in mind. I think we talked about that on the Stop Adani episode. But yeah, look at the actual numbers, people. Doesn't tell quite the same story that the Murdoch media would like you to believe.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Okay, Finally, a week after Australia went to the polls, a green wave surged through European elections, with the Grünen emerging as the most popular party in Germany for the first time in the country's history, taking 27% of the vote. The school strikers and Extinction Rebellion had put climate back on the agenda. A surge of left-wing populism, a push for a Green New Deal. Was this just the beginning? As one of the Guardian's correspondents observed, once seen as fringe idealists, the Greens have obtained credibility after serving as part of coalitions in several countries. They are a party of government and not just a home for disconcerted protest voters. While a European-style green wave is unlikely in Australia, given our voting system, a sharp post-election analysis by commentator Greg Jericho posed a challenge to the Greens and Labor. After a quarter century of policy failure, the parties should join forces and work together for the climate's sake. Labor's apparent drift to the right under Anthony Albanese may well suit the Greens. In a cheeky reshuffle announcement following the election, Richard Di Natale described his party as the real opposition, styling his spokespeople as shadow ministers for the first time. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Someone needs to stand up against Scott Morrison's regime of failed trickle-down economics, he said, or we'll end up living in a dog-eat-dog society like Trump's America. The story of the Greens in Australia, always overreaching, always close to splitting, always at a crossroads, is far from over.
That's annoyingly astute, isn't it? That final sentence.
Well, the idea about us working together with Labor wasn't quite there. And
yeah, not that, but always overreaching, always close to splitting, always at a crossroads, far from over.
I don't know about Labor's apparent drift to the right. Anthony Albanese hasn't suited the Greens particularly well, but
yeah. Well, it did.
It did briefly, yes.
Like this was written pre-2022, so.
Of course, it did for that bit, yeah. But then, even though things keep getting worse, 325 happened. Anyway.
And we are again in Trump's America. Yes.
Yes, we're back in there, baby. That is chapter 11 of Inside the Greens by Paddy Manning. We did it, Emerald. We fucking did it.
Great. We have one more chapter of this part.
No, that's the end of part one.
Oh, that's the end of part one.
That's the end of part one. Yes. Part two of the book is all about looking forward. And we are yet to discuss whether we want to cover that on the show. I'd definitely like to talk to Paddy Manning, but that is certainly part one, chronicling the history of the party. We have come to an end of that part.
Wow. That's the end of history.
And they all live happily ever after.
All you have to do is listen to Serious Danger. You read Paddy Manning's Inside the Greens, and then you go Inside the Greens by listening to the podcast.
That's the one.
Well, because 2019, it must have been soon after that, or maybe while I was a candidate, that you interviewed me on your show. And we talked about renters' rights and stuff. And then soon after that, you were like, let's do a podcast. Wow.
Part two, the challenge ahead, confronting the climate emergency, tackling inequality in the aspirational era, pursuing peace in the age of the strongman, and cleaning up Australia's democracy. So, we will discuss. Thank you so much for listening, Danger Dogs. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for supporting our show. We love you.
We really do. Share our stuff on socials at Serious Danger AU, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.